So I actually just wanted to sit down with you today to have what I would consider more of an open conversation
Okay.
about what the market is right now because most people are watching news cycles, they're seeing TikTok stars, they're reading their local newspaper, and I don't know if you've ever read those headlines as a real estate professional. Wow, are they selling ad space? Because it's one of those things where, like, if you just read the headline article,
Yeah.
it's very doom and gloom. Like,
Yeah.
very, very doom and gloom. But I think what most people are not able to do is have a conversation with a normal real estate agent in their marketplace about what it's actually like to buy or sell.
Yeah. No kidding.
So,
Because I've gotten like my dad has already sent many things my way
yeah.
of yeah. Hey, take a look at this. Did you see this? Did you see that? I'm like, yeah. It's hard to miss right now. But yeah,
Yeah.
headlines. The headlines don't do it justice. I would say.
No, I think the last one I read was, commissions are dead
Yeah.
and it's impossible for people to buy homes right now.
Yeah.
And I think when you walk through this office and you see like a closing happening every day, obviously that's not reflective of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch base sincerely on what it's like to be a buyer in today's marketplace and why, like, right now, specifically, it's so important that you are aligned with like a real
100%.
estate professional who helps people
Yeah.
buy homes all the time.
All the time. Yeah. I think it's just like I think not only being with someone who's proficient in helping someone buy, but also proficient in what's actually happening in the market. Because
Yeah.
that's a big understanding of too of like strategic strategies we're taking, or I guess agents who are proficient in helping people buy that they're taking to actually generally help a client get into a home and successfully, especially in this market.
Yeah. It's how many agents do we know right now who are helping 15 buyers who aren't winning any homes?
A lot.
So, like, what it means to me is A, they're not having realistic conversations with their clients about what it takes to win an offer.
Yeah, 100%.
Because there is this giant misconception that, like, just write the highest amount of money and that will be what is your winning
Yeah,
offer. When we both know that, like, that's a good start,
yeah,
is
yeah,
to start
yeah.
with a higher offer price. But what have you been like advising your clients on how to win offers, specifically when you're in competition of 3 or 5 other offers?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to like any type of competition space is lowest contingencies, right, and the best possible offer you can put forward. But I also just think that a lot of clients looking for houses right now that aren't they don't have the motivation quite like other clients, right? So
Yeah.
I think you start to see that when you sit down and start to chat with them about, hey, we need to do X and X. You know, if they're open to the idea of actually doing what it takes to purchase the home, especially in this market, right? They're more than likely going to write a stronger offer. But I think right now what we're doing is we're advising them to write lowest amount of contingencies
And
and the highest they're comfortable. I think it also comes down to what they're comfortable with too, right? Because
yeah.
like you people are only comfortable going up to a certain amount, and a lot of times we're looking right now, especially it's difficult for me to sit down and say, hey, it's listed at 400 and it's going to go for 425 because we just there's sometimes there's no comps to prove it. And that's a conversation I have with them is, I know what maybe you're seeing or I'm seeing, but just because comps say 425 doesn't mean that they actually mean anything, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think I'm helping buyers who the last time they purchased was a significantly long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and especially with new buyers who haven't purchased in a while, and there is like the wall.
Yeah.
Like there is this trust wall with me because we just talked about, writing over asking and dropping
Yeah.
contingencies and stuff.
Yeah.
Like having that good relationship where they trust you is the most important thing to helping them win because yes, we're going to be talking about how consciously aware they are, what the monthly budget would be if they offered here,
Yeah.
what the pros and cons of doing like inspection allowances or
Yeah.
appraisal gaps or things to help them win the offer. And really, I can totally see it in some of my clients' eyes, and it's really depressing because this is a scenario. We go into the dream home that they described,
Yeah.
but it's the first home they're seeing since they started shopping.
Yeah.
They both absolutely love it, and I do believe they're in a position where they could win this home, but they're so kind of set back. at like when we start talking 25 over asking, 35 over asking,
Yeah.
we need to start talking about inspection allowances,
Yeah.
inspections in general,
Exactly.
appraisal gaps, financial contingencies, and how all of these things have to be kind of manipulated in order to make the strongest offer.
100%. Yeah, and I think like one of the biggest things that I've been really starting to hone in on is just what is their specific situation, right?
Yeah.
What buyer with every buyer, everyone has a different situation, and I've been almost it sounds weird, and they always ask me like, why are you trying to convince me not to buy a house? And I'm like, well, I'm not trying to do that, but I'm trying to let you know that you need to be in a house by August, September, right? Right now honestly might not be the best time to get into the market and find something, because if you're not necessarily willing to step in and do whatever it takes to get that house, you probably won't be competitive with a house price, right, that has that
Yeah.
attraction, of course, right? So that's what I've been trying to really hone in, and because I think that people who are motivated and who you do have that tough conversation with of, is it even the right time for you to purchase a home right now, and you're just completely honest with them, I think that builds rapport as well, right? Because they
Yeah.
start to take it as, okay, he's not just in it to sell me a home and get a commission. He's literally telling me, hey, based on your situation, it might not even be the right time for you to buy right now or even look in the market. It's kind of the same thing with sellers, right?
I think that's like really important that you touched upon about how often that we're telling people to not do something.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, and this is kind of unfortunately reflective on our industry where most people kind of view our industry negatively. Like, the way we get paid is when transactions happen.
yeah,
So I can understand that a consumer is just like, you just want me to do this, you just want me to do this so
yeah,
that you can get paid. And I think one of the best ways of building up that wall is truthfully being an advisor,
yeah,
even
exactly.
if it comes down to like, I love the fact that I can sit on this ethical moral high horse of being proud of the fact of how many times I've actually talked somebody out of making a bad decision
100%. Yeah,
that I would have got paid out of.
yeah, yeah,
And I think like there's a huge misconception on a couple of like what value we actually bring as
yeah,
buyers agents, as listing agents, and then on top of that, how we get paid.
yeah,
I think
exactly.
there's giant misconceptions about that. And I'm sure you've dealt with that with some of your clients as far as both of those points. It's one, how on earth do you get paid when you're helping me buy this home? And without being able to articulate that to the client and sort of the value add you bring, I can understand why that wall is solid and why there's a
Yeah,
ginormous distrust in our profession. And I guess I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of the ways that you, and I hate to phrase it like this, but like add value, but one of some of the most obvious points that you bring to the table when it comes to how to value add you? Like, why should someone work with us?
yeah, 100%. I think it comes down to individually what a certain client is good at, right? Understanding the buyer's situation. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, over, and I haven't been doing this a ton of time, but that I've learned is really understanding the buyer's situation and how to add value after you have an accepted offer. Because you can add value at the front end of, you know, okay, what is the value of a home, right? Like, where do I think it's, fair? What can we do to win the offer? Like you said, those inspection gaps or inspection guarantees,
Yeah.
like to call them, or those appraisal gaps, things like that. Like all of that, you're obviously, that's value, and that's understanding of who you are and what they are looking to do and trying to get them into that house. That's all value. But I think after the transaction is one of the biggest things that a lot of agents don't necessarily hit on, is actually getting it to the table and then negotiating more for your client after it's under contract. Whether that's getting them, an inspection comes back, you know, unfortunately, an inspection comes back bad. What are you doing to negotiate more for your client rather than just saying, well, can the seller fix it?
Yeah.
You know,
I just, like you touched on it, having multiple solutions to a problem.
exactly. Yeah.
Because I think it's like one of the craziest things that I always hear is like, did it pass inspections? Where it's like, it's not binary, it's
Yeah.
not yes or no. So I find that like when people are telling each other, like, my home passed inspections, I always kind of giggle because it's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
The whole point of the home inspection is to discover the condition of the home. It's not
Yeah.
to say like if it's a good home or not.
Yeah.
We just want to know at what state all the components are in.
Yeah.
And then the value add there is like we have to familiarize ourselves with all the components of a home.
Exactly.
So that when things are brought up as red flags on an inspection, we know whether or not it's a big deal. Like I've had
100%.
in every single inspection grading. The dirt that goes up to the side of your house, grading gets called
every
out.
time.
Every single, and they call it out big red letters,
Yeah.
and it's intimidating. And then the second thing is like GFCI outlets on all counter spaces that's near your water sources.
Exactly.
Always gets called out.
100%.
And people get really freaked out about that until you start talking about like what we're talking about is like taking the outlet out, putting a new one in. We can have a licensed electrician come out here and do it to make you feel better, but we're talking about a total cost of repair of like $80 an outlet.
Yeah, and that's why like I think one of the biggest things is like, especially with if we were on the topic of inspections, like the biggest value is like having an agent who actually knows how to read an inspection and then negotiate an inspection, right? Because like, I mean, you could have an inspector in a new construction, they're gonna find something to call out 100%. Like that's their job, right? Like, and then some of these houses you get a 12-page long inspection report and your client's freaking out and you're like, okay, everything on this entire sheet is under $1,000. We're okay. The carpet's wrinkled, you know, like it's a trip hazard, but they're gonna call it out, right? But that's not something that necessarily inexperienced buyer is gonna look at. They're gonna look at the big red letters like you say and be like, oh my God, like that's terrifying. There's a problem with the grading. Could be water in the basement, even though the basement's bone dry.
It's so after getting into the industry and seeing like how much is involved, and knowing your product, knowing contracts, because I honestly got half the time, I hate to kind of relay that not all of our industry is consummate professionals who are very good at what they do, just like every industry.
100%, everything.
So honest to God, just having the knowledge of the contracts intimately allows me to have a foundation for negotiation that is like undeniable. So when I go into negotiations, I'm very confident because there are things where I'm like, hey, I know for a fact if this falls apart, they're going to have a problem with this issue with every single buyer that comes after us.
Yeah.
Like it's a big enough issue and either is like an expenditure that would be out of pocket or whatever. So we should be forward in our intentions of making sure that you're either of the understanding that this is kind of what it took to win the home and you're comfortable with that expenditure, or we know kind of like our ripcord moment, I call it, where it's like we reached a point where I feel that I cannot move forward. And I think rookie agents, maybe with like the quote unquote commission breath, you may have that unfortunate feeling of them persuading you to do something that might not be in your best interest because you could possibly lose equity. Like 100%. It could cost you money to work with a bad agent.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And you're 100% right, because there's a lot of agents who, for better or worse, don't do a lot of business. So when they have an opportunity to do business, right, whether they're newer or, a part-time agent or someone who's just been in the game and maybe isn't excelling or does a whole bunch of business. Not that business makes a big difference, the amount, right? But still, like when you get that opportunity, if you are working with an agent who doesn't have your best interest in mind or isn't worried about things that come up that maybe they should be or pointing them out, and he just wants to get it to the closing table to receive his check, that leaves a bad breath and can cost a lot of money and ultimately in the end for the especially with inspection or even like appraisal too. I mean,
because I'm not gonna lie to you, I have been the guy to kind of be a showstopper after inspections because my buyers are unaware of the repercussions of the issue that were brought up.
Yeah.
And they're just like, Max, it's fine. I don't mind moving forward.
Yeah.
And one of the most hilarious ones is like whenever we have huge, like ancient old trees, especially in the city, in between the house and the discharge, like the sewer, there is a possibility that your discharge water out of your sink and stuff that flows underneath the ground into that root system can penetrate that sewage lateral.
Yeah.
So we had a deal come up where they were just forward and they're like, hey, just so you guys know, and this is another reason I really don't recommend home sellers speaking
Yeah.
directly
Yeah.
to me ever,
Yep.
because they do things like cost themselves money by innocently saying something that they didn't think was a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And in one of these transactions, we had them be very forward. They're like, we pour that chemical stuff down the drain every once in a while to make sure that it doesn't back up. And I'm like, oh, that's a huge red flag. And I pulled
Yeah.
my clients aside after. I'm like, that is a huge red flag. And they're
Yeah.
like, I don't know. They said they only did it like 2 or 3
That's
times a year.
fine.
And I'm like, but what it means is there's holes in your
Yeah.
discharge lateral that roots are coming up through. So even when they pour the chemicals down, it kills the roots flow down. There's still holes in your discharge. So the
Yeah.
next root system is growing in there so fast.
Yeah.
So what they thought was not a big deal, just pour some chemicals down the drain, ended
Yeah.
up costing the seller close to 15 grand to put a sleeve
Yeah.
inside there to prevent any future problems. And that was paid for by the seller. And the amount of times, like, I have heard horror stories of people not aligning themselves, because the big deal is you say like a newer agent or part-time agent and it's not necessarily volume.
No.
But one of the best examples I've ever heard is if you had somebody who only removed 4 appendixes a year
Yeah.
and yours was about to burst, would you want the guy who only did it 4 times a year, or
Yeah.
did it 6 times a day, every day,
Yeah.
to the point where he was pretty bored with it?
Yeah, exactly.
You'd probably want the person with the at-bats of like 1,000 to 2,000,
No kidding.
handling
Yeah.
the most important part of your investment portfolio for a lot of people.
For a lot of people. Yeah,
Do
exactly.
you, I mean, because the biggest deal for me is interviewing agents. I don't think enough people know how to interview an agent. I think a lot of people find their softball buddy or
Yeah.
their coworker who
Yeah.
does it part time or whatever, and they kind of assume that we're all the same. Have you had experiences where your own clients were just impressed with what you brought to the table versus their past experiences?
I think I've had a couple experiences for sure. Um, I think the biggest thing is just like you said, interviewing agents, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone knows someone who knows an agent, or an agent yourself, or your family member is an agent, or
Yeah.
whatever that scenario looks like. And just familiarizing yourself with what they're actually doing for you, right? And I think trust too is big, in that field. Like obviously, I found we're a big internet lead type of
Business.
yeah,
Yeah.
and relaying the significance of what we do as agents to those leads is 10 times more important as it is to someone who was referred to me, or someone
Yeah.
close to family, right? But still, just like you said, they're surprised. And I think like the biggest thing where people are like I've never had an agent tell me not to sell my house,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not to buy a
Yeah.
house, or maybe this isn't the right time. And I just had a scenario come up where fantastic guy, amazing guy, like very, very kind to talk to on the phone. And his house was, I don't know, 600,000. He wanted to sell it. He was hyped, and he wanted, I don't know, 650 for it. He's like, well, we priced it at 600 to do this and yada yada, and almost convinced himself not to sell it. So I finally asked him. I said, hey, like, it sounds like you love your home. You have a low interest rate. You like the area. You've been there quite a while. Why even list it in any way, shape, or form? Why? And he had it at 600, and to be honest, I probably wouldn't have listed anything over 550
Yeah.
anyways. But relaying that information, and at the end of the day, he now told me at the end of the call, we were on the phone for quite some time, just honestly trying to convince him, hey, like, you love your house, man. Like, you're not
Yeah.
gonna get 650 for it. If you want me to
Yes.
sell it, I'm confident I can get it sold for X and get it sold for top dollar, but I can't get it sold for 650. And just relaying that information to him, at the end of the call, he says, just stay in touch with me because I'm gonna want to sell it at one point. He's like, I've never had anyone tell me not to sell my house.
Yeah.
And like relaying that information, or to a buyer, like you said, relaying, like you said, like you just telling them off the bat, you guys love this house, but here's the red flag, right? So this either needs to get taken care of, rather than just writing up a contract and sending it in, and turning a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
That's the value. The value is just the trust you can build, and just the honesty with them. because as an agent, they kind of, I feel like they look at us like salespeople, like car
Yeah.
salespeople, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to sell me a car. He doesn't care about the mileage. If there's a problem, he's not going to tell me, right? Like, so relaying that information of, hey man, like, to be honest, this might not be the right home for you. This might not be this, or I don't know if it's the right time for you to look right now. And just being honest with them, I think has they're very like, wow, like he's not just in it for the money.
Yeah, I think that we are sometimes described as fiduciaries, and I think that's a really appropriate. This, sorry, I'm
You're a
shutting this
busy guy,
off.
dude.
This is the life of a real estate agent,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Busy guy.
No, I find that a lot of people are starting their home buying journey, and they actually have taught themselves into what they think their goals are.
Yeah.
And by the time we actually get to the closing tables, how wildly different that picture looks.
Yeah.
And one of the things is just exposure to opportunity, learning about what the actual market is, and having a conversation with us about like what your goals are.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's exactly right.
You convince someone not to sell their house because it wasn't a good fit for their goals over it.
100%.
I have done that. I'm working with a buyer right now, 2 of them actually, and I love this. They're keeping their original first-time home.
Yeah.
They're going to rent it out,
Yeah.
and they're building equity over here, and they're making an income, and then they're buying their other home. They just began the wealth building portfolio in a simple like house hacking way.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were, an agent who just cared about
The transaction,
transactions and the units that you're doing, you'd be like, you should just sell that house because then you should, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's what separates the good agents from, potentially some of the other agents who paint the bad picture of like the agents who are generally telling you, hey, maybe you should keep that house, or let's sit down and run numbers on what your house could rent for, what it looks like, and then if it even makes sense to sell it to offset. Because like you also look at it, and I've had people, they could get, they have $200,000 worth of equity in their home, and if they put that down on a new home or whatever the situation is, their payment's going to be adjusted by the same amount of profit that they would take from the home being rented itself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you would be not smart, to sell that house instead of just using the income from it to offset your mortgage, even though it's a little bit higher. And they have 2 properties and 2 assets now. So like I think relaying, like you said, that I think that's what separates the good ones from the bad ones is when they're actually in it to help you, rather than just, oh, I can do 2 units out of you, so sell your house.
I think that's, you highlighted something that I think a lot of people will resonate with. It's like having a salesperson come tell you that selling something is not in your best interest.
Yeah.
And I'm genuinely here to help you. Because I was taught very early in one of my like business ed classes in college. It was the LTV. It was not loan to value. It was the lifetime value of the relationship between a customer and a provider.
Yeah.
And I truly mean it when I'm like, I want to be their realtor for their entire life.
Yeah.
And what that looks like is genuinely, really aligning myself with their goals and helping them either A, get to that goal line, or B, expose them to other possibilities while trying to reach that. I describe like home shopping like a funnel.
Yeah.
Because typically they're like, this is kind of what I think I want.
Yeah.
And then by the time we're writing offers, it's like right here. And then by the time we write a winning offer, they're like,
different.
I don't even have to go see that home, Max. You told me about this and this or whatever.
Yeah.
So that funneling process is really cool to watch somebody go through too.
100%.
Because sometimes the funnel happens quickly where like we'll have a conversation about their goals and then the next day we go see 3 homes and they write on one of them. And it's because we just gave them enough information to make a confident decision.
Exactly.
I will talk about a recent moment I've had where somebody else brought their own mortgage lender, which is fine. I love when people are diverse and are shopping around, but here's the negative. Like, I align people with mortgage lenders that I can confidently tell you will be professionals, be on the ball. Communication is one of our top priorities, is competitive when it comes to the mortgage rate and closing costs. And I can confidently tell you that because I shopped around year after year going like, who's the best that I know at delivering these loan products?
Yeah.
Who's constantly available, at least within a time frame of a day?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've ever done a deal with a bank. they won't pick up the phone outside of business hours.
Yeah, I also think now that you hit on that, like that's a huge value add that realtors bring to buyers.
The references,
Yeah.
the like slew of people are like,
Yeah.
don't use them, use these people.
Yeah.
Why? Oh, because A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
And this guy over here has 17 negative reviews across
Exactly.
all the realtors, which is a big deal.
Exactly. And just like you said, like with a lender specific, like having someone who's going to have the good communication and who you can call on a Saturday if you have a problem with an offer. Because like I don't think a lot of people take into consideration like there are times where we have to double check with your lender. If something comes up to we need to you need to go $5,000 higher to win a house, and if I can't get a hold of your lender, there's nothing I can do.
Can you can you imagine that scenario? It's 5 p.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So we're out of banking hours.
Yep.
We're $5,000 away from locking in a deal at a multiple offer
Yeah.
situation, and I can't reach your lender.
Yeah, and if people don't know that and people don't understand that, then they're gonna put themselves in a position where they're going to lose that dream house over $5,000 because their lender didn't pick up the phone because he was at home.
Yes. Yes. I can't like when
you know, like
it comes down like here's the other thing, the inspection allowance.
Yeah.
I put a $5,000 inspection allowance on an offer after discussing the pros and cons with my client. They're very confident. We go in the home, we get a list of defects. And they're like, Max, you know, like now I'm getting nervous because like there were some other bigger items that popped up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. Well, obviously I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to get it's not hard to find $5,000 worth of defects in any single home.
Yeah, no kidding.
In any single home.
Yeah,
just for everything that popped up, you bring out contractors. And I find it amazing that like here's a time frame where maybe it's a real issue. Maybe it's a furnace that like isn't actually reaching normal performance.
Yeah.
And we need a service tech out there within the last 5 days that we have to even renegotiate it.
Yeah.
And if you go on Google right now and you just start looking for like heating and cooling services, the most prominent people are the people who pay the most to be as high as they can on Google. Does that mean that maybe in their business portfolio, they have to add in cost expenditure to bring ads like that? As opposed to when we align you with like the mom and pop guy who's been doing West Dallas plumbing since he was 13. That's his dad. And he has reasonable rates because he doesn't have billboards.
Yeah.
Which guy do you want coming out to give you a realistic quote for how to move forward? Because it could be a deal killer when it doesn't have to be.
Exactly. Yeah, you get a quote from someone and it's $3,000 high and you're like,
my favorite is bringing out contractors who sub out the job.
Yeah.
So they're basically the guys who have the wrap trucks and their salespeople come out.
Yeah.
My goodness, what a difference it is when you're talking to like a salesperson who comes out to like the mom and pop shop where like the second generation guy comes out and he is on it.
Yeah.
He knows every component. He's like barely into the basement. He's like, let me show you this and this. I'm like, you don't even want to get closer? And he's like, I mean, I want to point things out, but I can already tell from here.
Yeah.
And this is what I recommend, and this would be overboard. But, you know, I'll give you a quote for both, depending on what you guys are concerned about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a better experience. And, like, it's not rare for somebody to pick up the phone, try and get a contractor, calling a list of 12 people from references from friends, from family members, or whatever. You get this long list of then, do you know how to interview a contractor?
Yeah.
Like, if you've never done it before, it's all the way from like intimidating to reckless.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of people just be like, I just call the guy, came over, he gave me a bid for like $2,000 less than all the other guys, and I'm like, red flag.
Yeah.
Immediate. Did you say you called him and he immediately came over, which means he's not working?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, gave you a bid that was $2,000 less on like a $4,000 thing.
Yeah.
50. How is that guy going to do the job for 50% less than the other three? And then, yeah, I don't know why I didn't have a good experience with him when I hired him. I'm like,
yeah.
He underbid the job, figured it out halfway through, and probably walked off. Yeah, that's exactly what he did. I'm like, So having a network in your back pocket of people that are reliable and proven.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think a lot of people, even though there are 30,000 plus realtors in southeastern Wisconsin. The network is actually really small. Like,
it is.
of the people who make enough money doing this to feed themselves, pay their car payment, pay their living expenses, is a small portion of licensed realtors right now.
It is. For sure.
Like, I love making the leaderboard, but it is also a reflection of like, we might not have enough go-getters in our industry. We might not have enough people who, and I think this is also what I want to touch on with you, especially, is what it is to be a realtor in today's day and age.
Yeah.
I think most people see like only the promotional stuff, or like limitless income, make your own schedule. It's just all glory and no eating dirt while you do it.
Yeah, no one's honest about it at all, I think, in any way, shape, or form. Young AJ coming out of high school saw the limitless, the limitless income and the easy, you sell a house, you make 10 grand. Or, I think what a lot of people perceive realtors to be, but a lot of people don't see the hours upon hours upon hours that we spend not only here doing work to get business, but also work to successfully close business too. And I'm sure you can relate to this, like the times where you're in here at 9-10 o'clock writing offers, or I've been at nice dinners with significant others at the time and been right on my computer writing offers. So I think like that, and it not necessarily that's the dark side, but it's not just a free for all, like let me go to the mall at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, or because the successful realtors who are actually doing the business and the volume, like you said, to support themselves, support the people that they love, are the ones who are sticking to a schedule, much like they had a job at a normal company, right? And that's the biggest thing, and that's one thing I've really had to learn over the last like 2 years of doing this was, to be honest, last year that was a learning phase for me too. And when I finally realized that you have to set a specific schedule, stick to that schedule day in and day out, and do the same things over
like
and over
militant
again. Yeah, like the military, literally. Like you cannot, like your time is valuable, right? And just sticking to the schedule you write down, for better or for worse, that's what it truly takes. And I don't think that's touched on nearly at all. I also don't think when you get a call from a client and they went with someone else, or the voicemail after voicemail after voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, or you show 30 houses and they said it's to go with someone else, or like the negative impact, it's always the flashy cars, the watches, the dinners, the mall trips, the let me just leave the office at 12. That's what everyone sees, right?
I'm sure.
But no one ever sees the people who, or sees the actual true
day to day.
Yeah, the day to day.
And I think that is a problem for us are there agents who do that stuff? Yeah, where they come in at 9 and they leave at 1 and they just show a house a week and clearly are not making enough closings where this is the only way that they're eating. That's like so obvious.
Yeah.
But I don't think people see like how many phone calls would you make in an average day? I think the like when you remove the like sexiness of real estate, it is it's an entrepreneurial journey for most realtors where they discover that they have to be able to run a business and be a performer in that business.
Yeah.
And I think it's very challenging for somebody to not see the glamour part. Because by the time I'm in front of a client, it's the HGTV BS.
You're kidding,
but I don't think anybody sees the 3 to 5 hours a day you're on the phone looking for new clients. Then the financial experiments that are marketing, that is trying to get new clients through either postcard mailers, Facebook ads, YouTube series, whatever it is. And then the business expenditures, your time in the business, and then there's like this glory piece that is 2%.
Yeah.
And nobody, because that doesn't sell you at all to show like, this is the part that sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
This is where 99% of rejection is sales. And Like the scariest numbers that you'll ever hear is in the first year, the attrition rate, the amount of people who drop out of real estate, I think is like 80%.
I think roughly, yeah.
Within the first 2 to 3 years, it's something like 95 or
Yeah,
96%.
a lot of people make it past the first 2 years, 100%.
Which I totally get, because one, a lot of people don't understand the initial investment it takes to become a realtor.
Yeah.
There's marketing materials, there's on and on and on. There's ongoing trainings. Like if you want to be a top performer who's able to negotiate adamantly, and here's the trick. I have to be a very good negotiator while typically holding the hand of the other realtor, because this is their second transaction in 2 years. So I need to make sure they don't mess up their end, and we don't mess up our end while doing the best I can for my client.
Yeah.
And it gets really scary when the other person isn't represented, because I have this absolute fiduciary duty to the people who I'm helping selling their home, and it's to get them the most amount of money absolutely possible for that client. So what happens when an unrepresented person enters the arena and wants to write an offer with me? That means that I'm working in my seller's best interest.
Yeah.
Do you think that is one of those times where you have to be as aggressive as possible on your negotiation, just like you would with every other agent possible who's writing an offer, knowing that they don't have somebody in their corner who does this every day, and there is a knowledge gap that absolutely costs people money. Like buyers who are writing offers on my listings, they don't know, A, how to win, or B, they're taking my advice on how to win an offer with my clients. It is my job to get the most amount of money for that person. Now, I'm never dishonest, I'm never fraudulent, but it is my job to get my client the most amount of money, and it does very much feel like a lamb entering just a den of wolves, and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I've done this before, kind of like, ha, but like, hey, you don't want to go talk to like your realtor about writing this? And like, no, I'd rather not include them and just write with you. And I'm like, and I'm forward. I'm like, you should understand that I represent the seller in the scenario, and I'm just writing the offer as you, as like, we call it a customer. They're not a client.
Yeah, whatever they tell me.
Whatever they tell me. And then they're like, do you think this is good enough? My fiduciary responsibility is to be like, no, way higher.
Yeah.
Why do you need contingencies?
Yeah.
No, just give them the car too. Yeah. And that's really scary when I think about like, if my parents did that. Like, because not every single realtor will lean across the table and be like, hey, I work for the seller.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to write the offer with me? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's my responsibility to represent the seller's best interest.
Yep.
That will be, they're making a move, and yes, it is their home, but it's also a business decision for them. So they have to do this according to what makes them the most money, and that's it.
Yep.
Do you want to have someone represent you, or are you comfortable writing with me? And they'll be like, I let's just write it with you. And I'm like, look at me.
You try to convince them not to, right?
Just don't do that.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that you miss out on. And I mean, on the other end too, when I'm representing for sale by owners, I mean, you have had interactions with them. What I have found was they are the angriest, most aggressive people in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm nervous that they carry that energy into any phone call they're receiving, because one, in the state of Wisconsin, Zillow messed up and they became a brokerage, so they cannot advertise any home that's not on the MLS.
Yep.
So no for sale by owners are in the state of Wisconsin. That means that you're limited to putting your home on the market and selling it via Facebook Marketplace, which I don't know if you've ever sold anything online.
Gotta love that.
Weirdos come out of the woodwork and they're just like, can I see your home at Thursday at 3? And you're like, sure. And you look through the people and there's like their whole family's there. And they're like, hey guys, shoes, just, okay, whatever. And then they're like, oh, I just got to talk to my lender now.
Yeah.
In the wrong order. And then you have to vet these people, make sure they're pre-qualified, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's no surprise to me that like I think it's more than 90% of for sale by owners in Wisconsin eventually list with a realtor.
Yeah, that number sounds right
Yeah.
too. And I think like another thing with like even if you're just selling it by yourself or as an unrepresented buyer too, it's just a lot of people overlook the getting like you have to get the transaction to close.
Yeah.
And I think like there's a stat that's like 80% of um 80% of transactions don't get to the closing table with the same terms that were agreed upon in the initial contract. Even with realtors
Yep.
too, which is crazy to me. And that's like one of the things that I try to hit on with buyers or sellers too, is like, look, like you can go out and have no representation and go write your own offers or go write with the listing agent. But
Yeah.
if it comes down to negotiating, like you said, your job is for the seller. And 80% of the time there's going to be post
Yeah.
under contract like negotiations, right? So if that's the case, are you willing to roll the dice that either one there is no, you know, under contract post under contract
Yeah.
negotiations. But if there is, who do you think he's going to try to negotiate for? You have no one in your corner to tell you what is a good deal or a bad deal. You're just going based off of what he says.
Yeah.
And
It's
more than likely, whether it's a for sale by owner who's trying to sell the house for the most amount of money or an agent who's trying to sell the house for his client for the most amount of money. It doesn't matter which way you are. It all comes back full circle of you don't have anyone telling you what to do or negotiating on your behalf for the best deal. So you're just stuck with that's what they told me.
and how horrifying is that you brought
Yeah.
up like 2 days ago the divorce example. It
Yeah.
would be like your wife is divorcing you,
Yeah.
got a lawyer, and then you go to her lawyer
Yeah, the
to
same
talk
lawyer.
about the terms of the divorce.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's like hiring.
he's not
yeah.
working in your best
It's
interest.
a conflict of interest, right? Like
Yeah.
you exactly. You if I was in any type of situation, any type of like legal situation, you're not gonna hire the same lawyer that the person that you're
Yeah.
going against has on their court because it's like you have no one with your best interest, right? Like
Yeah.
especially in like a divorce situation, right? Like your wife goes out and gets a lawyer, you're not gonna go to that one and be like, well, you represent her, so represent me, right? Like like
Oh my God.
yeah.
And
exactly.
I do think there's a tremendous amount of people who, not necessarily this day and age, well, here's another thing, not necessarily this day and age, who are buying homes when they see it off of Realtor.com and Zillow.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest factors is you're just way too late. By the time my
Yeah.
listing
Dude,
is
true.
on Realtor.com, everyone in this
Especially
office
today, dude.
knows about that home.
Yeah.
The day it goes live,
Yeah.
typically in what we call our delayed or coming soon, we already have the scheduled like showing appointments for when we start showing.
Yeah.
And then we are now in negotiation of 3 to 5 offers within 48 hours. And then you come to the open house on Sunday.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I got to wait till Monday to talk to my mortgage lender. And
Yeah.
we're like, tonight.
Too late. Yeah.
We're making
it's
it
too late.
like, at this point, she told me to shut down showings.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. That's bananas. We're like, hey, Max, we really like being dislodged from our home
Yeah.
every day, all day long.
Yeah.
But let's wrap it up.
Let's
We
wrap it
got
up.
5 offers. I would have taken the first one we got, and it only got better from there. So
Yeah.
let's just shut down the other showings. And I'm like, just so you know, like more higher showings may come on that third day. Because I do like to allow people in this market,
Yeah. Especially
first
this one.
shift, second shift
Yeah.
workers, weekday and a weekend.
Yeah, you have to.
So unless like I typically list homes on Friday.
Yep.
And then by honest to God Sunday night, we're done negotiating.
Yeah.
Like we got all the offers
Yep.
in 16 hours.
Yeah.
And then we countered the ones that we felt were appropriate, or one just made complete sense, or whatever. But we still strategically wait.
Yeah.
So, but if you're coming in 3 days after and thinking then you're gonna get your mortgage loan officer and
Yeah.
whatever, like just right now, if somebody's like, Max, I need you to get your W-2s, your taxes, your 1099s, your income stubs, and be like, so how long do I have to gather? And they'd be like,
Yeah.
tonight. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
I need to have it in 20
I got to
minutes.
reach out to my accountant who hates me because
Yeah.
I bring him shoe boxes of receipts.
Yeah.
And he's going to give me back like last year's taxes and whatever.
Yeah.
By the time I present that to like an Aaron of A Plus Mortgage or a John, it's too late. The house I love is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like one of the craziest things happening right now. And like That's one thing that I've tried to do is like, I honestly, before I even show, I call the listing agent. Like, if
Yeah.
it's 1 or 2 days on market, dude, I call the list. I don't even set a showing until I call the listing agent. And the
Yeah.
amount of times it's like, yep, we're reviewing tonight, or yep, it's 5 o'clock, or yeah, we have 4 offers on the table. We're just gonna accept something, or it literally hit the market today, and it's the second day on market, and or yesterday, and it's second day on market, and it says pending, and you're just like, I don't even know what to do at this point. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, the amount of time, especially being an internet based business, right? From leads, like
Yep.
you'll get leads all the time, and it's 3 days, 4 days on market. You make a call, and yep, we're in the process of reviewing, or yeah, we already have an accepted offer, or it's already showing contingent. So yeah,
The
that's a
the timeline is, and I do sympathize because every buyer we bring through
yeah.
these homes, we're like, here's an hour to make a 7 to 15
Yeah.
year decision.
That's why I never like to do it. Like I always try to especially with like just anyone in general. I'm always like, I don't want to give you this information, but they're reviewing today at 5, and it's 2 o'clock. So for me to get it in by 4, which is when they want it, I need to have an answer in like an hour tops, and then I can write the offer again by 4. So like,
Yeah.
I never like to tell anyone that because it's not a fun. It's not a especially like you said. That's a 15, 20, sometimes 20 plus year decision for them, and you're just make it in an hour, and otherwise
Yeah.
like especially when you talk about you have to go 30, 40, 25,000 over asking, right? Like
Can you
that's
imagine meeting a stranger
yeah
and they're like, hey, in order to win today, by the way, nice to meet you.
yeah nice to meet
In
you.
order to win today, we need to be 40 grand over. We need to give them a $5,000 to $10,000 inspection allowance in case things come up.
Yep.
And we need an appraisal gap because if there's 15 offers, we're most likely going to settle above the appraised value. So their main concern is how much of that money is going to be guaranteed in my wallet.
Yeah, people look at me like I'm nuts.
And to be fair, on the other end of that, you haven't been shopping in 7 years.
Yeah.
You bought your house in like 1990. You got 8% interest rate, but you paid for it at 125 grand.
Yeah.
It's now worth 330. You're trying to buy a $500,000 home,
Yeah.
and you come up and you're like,
So yeah.
it's been a while. What do you know about the market right now? And honestly, because it highlights a huge thing in our business, I wanted to ask you a question that I will answer, obviously, but I'm curious as to how you feel. If I have a buyer come up to me and go, Max, we love the house. We really, really want it. Let's write list price. Do you then go into, I do, a little bit of an educational TED Talk about why that might not be the best offer to win the home. So I have had people go, and it drives on motivation, and it drives on that wall of trust. So wall of trust is way up here. Like, they don't trust me at all.
Yeah.
I'm a new person in their life who's trying to help them win a home. I have been doing this twice a month minimum all the way to close.
Yeah.
So I know what it takes, but that is an intimidating thing
Yeah.
to put in front of someone who the last time they had an inspection, they had an appraisal, no waiver of anything.
Yeah.
Then the appraisal, then they found knick-knacky stuff on the inspection, got the seller to do the repairs before closing. It appraised low. They further did it. Then they decided they needed closing cost credits to help with the loan and got it all. And then the next time they purchase, we're just like, basically the reverse of all that.
Yeah, it was
Like,
a $300,000 house, and you got it for $275, set and done. Everything you wanted was taken care of. Yeah. And now you're just like, well, anything you want taken care of, just do it after you close. Yeah.
So this is hilarious. I've called the listing agent before, and I don't think he was necessarily following the exact guidelines of the law. But I'm like, hey, I just wanted to run this by you because we do put buyers through like an emotional spectrum during the offer writing process.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's exciting, then they're waiting, then the anticipation, and then as agents, we have a pretty good idea of whether they're going to win. And I do like to give my prospective buyers kind of like odds.
Yeah.
Like, guys, this was great about our offer, but this could be the thing that would make a listing agent like myself maybe suggest a different offer.
Yeah.
Like, one is, well, a lot of people are struggling right now because they have home sale contingencies. And my conversation, because the lender is doing his best to guide you. He's there to do the same thing we do, but for your money.
Yeah.
He's trying to guide you, and they're very cordial and professional about the way they present things. And then you come to me and I'm like, there's no effing way we're winning an offer with a home sale contingency.
Yeah, he's like, don't even try at this point.
Like, I can call him right now and I'm going to put him on speaker. And I've done this with a buddy who was a client. Yeah. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And the listing agent was friend. He's in this office. I won't name him. He's like, Max, I can't answer that. But it wouldn't be our top 3. And I'm like, that's fair. Yeah. Love you. Bye.
Yeah.
Hung up the phone and then looked at my client and he's like, well, that's disappointing. Because he was going to write a good offer.
Yeah.
But the difference between winning, I mean, can you imagine? You've been shopping for a very long time. You do have the available finances to do appraisal gaps. You've lost your first 3 on homes that you were like, we ask people when we're walking out, 1 to 10, how'd you feel about the home? They've lost out on like 7s or 8s out of 10. We find them a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
And now we're writing with everything that we have.
Yeah.
And then somebody brings in a cold person who doesn't know them that well and is like, hey, I know Max over here is not going to advise to his clients to go in at list price and not win the home. In order to be competitive with these people, we have to be a little bit more risky.
Yeah.
And I think I purposely use that word because it's like a calculated risk.
Yeah.
It's when we're going through and we're looking at offers, we're looking at the comps. And my biggest thing is like, we should concentrate on resale. But that's only important if you win the offer.
Yeah.
So we can spend a year writing offers that are fair market offers and never win anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you go New Berlin, Muskego, Big Bend, Oak Creek, Franklin, Brookfield, Elm Grove, Wauwatosa, Heartland, Milwaukee, and you write list price, you're not winning.
Yeah.
And it's because the competition out there is either A, tired of losing, or B, listen to their real estate professional on the first go and won it.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're like that 9 out of 10 on a motivation that either needs to get into a house or screwed.
Yeah, and then we have job transfer people and people are moving whatever into school systems.
Yeah,
and they're like,
exactly.
just get it done.
They don't care.
I trust you and I want you to get it done.
Yeah.
I did want to shift gears a little bit and talk to you about your entrepreneurial journey. Because that's another thing that I don't think people realize. And when we were talking a couple days ago, you mentioned the difference between being self-employed and being a business owner.
Yeah.
And that is something that I have been thinking about every half hour since we've had that conversation. And you highlighted it perfectly in that we are not small business owners.
No, we're not. No.
We're self-employed.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that I think I've even really been learning more about, right? Because I think getting into this, you are an entrepreneur, right? But ultimately, you're not a business owner. And I think a lot of people don't know the difference. And I always describe the difference as a business owner creates a business and systems that can run whether or not he's there. And
that's the crucial part.
That's the crucial part, right? And being in the real estate world, we're self-employed solely due to the fact that if I don't come to work for a day, a week or a day or whatever that is, and I don't make those phone calls or make those connections with those people, I'm not generating business. So that's, I think, the major difference is I have to come to work every single day. And if I miss one day, especially with our schedules, that's 20, 30, sometimes 40 conversations with people over the course of a day that I didn't have, right? Whether those are good conversations or with clients now or potential clients, those are still conversations I did not have with those people, and I'm losing business. So one of the biggest things that I think I've really started to learn more about is the idea of owning a business where if I step away, I know that business is going to run sufficiently by itself, right? There's always no matter who you are, whatever business, you still have to manage the business, of course, but I could go away and leave and that business is still going to run itself. And I think that's why it's so difficult for me to take time away from real estate, is because I know if I don't make those phone calls, I'm not making money.
So on your glamour highlight reel, tell me a little bit about like your schedule.
Yeah.
And the misconception about like you make your own schedule.
Yeah. So my schedule, and now my schedule is very extreme.
Yeah.
It's a very an extreme schedule. I don't recommend it to a lot of people, but I've dialed my schedule in quite a bit since I first started. So my schedule now is I'm not a 5 a.m. wake up like workout. I cannot do that. I'm not the type of person. So I get up around 6 ish around there. I try to be in the office between 7 and at the very latest 7:30, like the very latest. So
Okay.
sometimes I'm in here at 7 if I have to do, maybe I have to get caught up on emails or whatever
Yeah.
it is. But between 7 and 7:30, if I'm here after 7:30, there's punishments for that. So I try to never be here after 7:30.
Love that.
Yeah.
It's like an accountability
It
thing.
is,
For
yeah.
okay.
It's a yeah. I owe. Funny enough, I give my dad $100 every time I'm not here at 7:30. So
Oh,
yeah, so
kind of a
it's a
smart,
hefty,
fun thing.
it's a hefty. Yeah,
I mean, it's still upsetting.
yeah, it's not a
Completely,
fun
yeah.
thing to do, but it was just an accountability thing for me. So here at 7:30, and then from 7:30 to 7:45 ish, I'm role playing, typically, getting ready to get on the phones. Then from 7:45 to 8, that's when I'm getting ready and preparing all the phone calls I'm gonna make, and then basically from 8 to 12:30, I'm on the phones constantly, pretty much all, basically for that what is it, 4.5 hours or
Yeah.
whatever that is.
And these phone calls are you building the business,
Yeah.
more clients, more connections,
Yeah.
that sort
So
of thing.
this is just strictly like new business. Like I don't take appointments in the morning. I don't do anything like that. So it's just 8 o'clock to basically, or you could say 7:30 to 12:30. That's, I don't know, what is that, 5 hours? That's on the phones prospecting for new business, whether it's expired, circle prospecting, buyer leads.
People who
really
really want to talk to you.
Yeah, fun people who want to have good quality conversations.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times it'll be like 100 phone calls,
Yeah.
50 people will pick up, people
Yeah.
will say mean things about my mom,
Yeah.
and then I'll have one great connection
Yep.
with someone who makes me just like that, like a dating experience where
Yeah.
you like find someone amazing. I don't even remember
I don't
all
remember
these
anything that
atrocious
Yeah.
train wreck of dates.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, I think like a one thing that a lot of people don't hit on is like that part sucks. Like I don't like doing it.
Oh,
right?
you don't like
that.
making phone calls where they're not happy to hear from you?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
that's a tough, like mentally, that's a killer sometimes. Like that's a tough thing to continuously do over and over again. But regardless, it has to get done, so it doesn't matter. So that's kind of the morning
Yes,
schedule.
but I would say that is a unique mindset for most realtors.
Yeah, most
It's
people really don't do it.
like, honest God, put your boots on, pick up your gun, and go.
Yeah,
Like,
basically. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
doesn't matter how you feel.
Nope. No.
Your emotional
Yeah.
spectrum, how much you had to eat, how much you had to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, you are militant about that, and it's
Yeah.
it's showing its results already.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think I really try to focus on is it realistically in anything that you do, whether, especially in running a business, right? Like it doesn't matter how you feel, it doesn't matter how tired you are, it doesn't matter what the weather is out today
Yeah.
or what happened yesterday or um honestly, one thing that I try to take into consideration is like personally in your life, doesn't matter when you get to the office, right? And that's one thing that I've, especially over this last little bit, there's personally been some big shifts in my life, 100%, especially with, like you said, how military I am on being
Yes.
here and doing my job and running successful businesses.
Which, your job.
Yeah.
It is our job
Yeah.
to make connections and to
Exactly.
bring deals together.
Yeah.
It's our job to do
That's
that.
our job. Yeah, exactly.
And I think most people come in with the misconception that it is our job
Yeah.
to show homes.
No.
It's client acquisition
Yeah.
is 90% of this job.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong. There is continuing education. There's making sure that
course.
you're a professional. There's trainings.
Yeah.
There's making sure that you are going to be a top contender, which means working on the business,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is different than in the business.
Yeah.
So you wear so many hats, especially what I call like the build stage of real estate careers, where there is kind of a point where, and we talked about this before,
Yeah.
this entrepreneurial journey, and they say enjoy the journey, but it sucks because you're alienated.
Yeah.
Like, make our own schedules. It's like, yeah, we have to be really, really militant in the first couple hours of our day because it's really the only controlling time period we have.
Yeah.
So we block off our mornings to do calling sessions.
Yeah.
Then the afternoon and evenings are a wild, chaotic appointment setting. Like, how many times have you been writing offers after 9 p.m.?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And it's because I think a lot of people kind of forget that we kind of work second shift.
Kind of. I always tell my clients like I just work whenever you need me to work. Now, I will say that's not everyone's mindset, right? And some people especially I will say like more successful real estate agents, there's a time where they cut it off, right? But I don't have the luxury of doing that yet, nor do I really want to, right? So, I know we got a little bit off topic, but like the schedule, obviously that's the schedule in the morning. I take 2 hours from 12:30 to 2:30, and I lift and eat lunch. So that's
good for you.
That's my time.
Really?
Yeah, because that's like a good break, right?
It is. It is a weird break in our day that's organic.
Yeah.
Which is not for most people.
Yeah. So 12:30 to 2:30, I lift and eat lunch, and then 2:30 to 4 is like the admin time. So that's like working, I guess you could say, on the business, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm kind of in the business, right? Transactions or emails or whatever it might be. And then typically I try to take all my appointments from like 4 to 6. If I don't have appointments at 4 to 6, sometimes I'll take them earlier in the afternoon, just client dependent.
Yeah.
And then if, it's a slow day and maybe I didn't have appointments that day, I get on the phones from 4 to 7. And I'll finish up back on the phones from 4 to 7. And then typically I finish up whatever work needs to get done. And then I'll either read or watch some sort of a educational video. And I'm out of here. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, so I'll either read or like
in an era where we're just sort of mindlessly consuming things, you choose to educate.
Yeah. Whether it's like a training video for real estate or a mindset thing or just a business book in general, I'll typically read one of those, and then I am working on a couple other extra things outside of real estate that I try to squeeze in there too at the night. So typically it's my schedule's, I would say, pretty consistently 7:30 to 9:30 or 10. I think is what my schedule ends up working out to, which that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
And anyone with a life outside of work, I don't think could necessarily swing that every day. But
I mean, unfortunately, we did talk about when you're in a building phase and you are crazy ambitious, and I do really mean to use the word crazy, because I think part of the attrition rate, part of the reason people like cycle out of this is they recognize that it requires such an intense amount of focus, time, and mental health to do this day in and day out, because very truthfully, we are sacrificing relationships, social events, family gatherings consistently
all the time.
And it's crazy to me because the amount of times I have canceled things with friends or with my other half or family members in order to do something for a client because of how crazy intense the time, like the amount of time most people have to make a decision on a home before it's literally not even an option, has forced me to cancel like going on dates. Or I have like the buddies who are in my wedding party are all like too used to it right now. And I feel bad about that. It's
never a fun feeling to call someone and be like, well,
I mean, we had plans for like 4 days prior, made the plans, and the day of, I'm like, hey man, I can't. And I love these guys, and they've all seen me, because we are 100% commission based, and we have all had a start to our career.
100%.
And the amount of times that I have skipped, like hitting zero in my bank account, or definitely hit zero and then live the rest of that month out on credit cards. Those guys were there for that.
And I think like that's like I think a value that you should feel like very grateful to have 100%. And I'm sure you do, but I haven't been quite that lucky with people in my life, so it's
to be fair, I guess I started in a different career. Had the BS at 9 to 5,
Yeah.
got out at 4.
Yeah.
Obviously leave early.
Yeah, of course.
It was weird. I will say that, like coming from corporate America, where your incentive is to work just hard enough not to get fired,
Yeah.
and their incentive is to pay you just enough
Just
so you
enough
don't
so you
quit.
quit. Yeah.
Creates just such a terrible work environment
Yeah, exactly.
that coming over to this profession, it was like almost like assaulting to my knowledge of what a day would look like.
Yeah.
Like,
I think one of the best things I've ever learned was that I generally, now I say my day is like 7:30 to 10:30, right? But or 9:30, whatever it is, whatever it ends up being, I'm sure.
yeah,
That's day to day dependent. But one of the greatest things that I've ever switched my mindset on is just I've lost all concept of time. Time just doesn't matter to me. It's no like, oh, I'm in here at 9 and I leave at 5, or oh, the day's over at 6:30. You
yeah.
know, I don't even know half the time what time it is or what day it is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's Saturday. It doesn't matter that it's Sunday. It doesn't matter that it's Monday. It doesn't matter what the day is. Like, I've generally tried to train myself to not look at the clock or the day as like dependent on what I'm doing. It doesn't matter.
Was
Right?
it conscious or unconscious? Where you just kind of, because I feel the same, and like I don't feel the days.
Yeah.
Like somebody will tell me what day it is, and I didn't honestly. I didn't
Yeah.
know. It's because if you work every single day,
It's
you
all the
don't
same
have
day.
the weekend. You don't
Yeah.
have a Friday. You don't have those markers where you're like,
Yeah.
I have days where like it'll be a Tuesday, and I'll be like, dude, I haven't taken a day off in 14 days, and my showing is until 5:30. Today's got to be that day.
Yeah.
Like today's got to be where I just shut everything down, like
Yeah.
do 2 weeks of laundry at once, like all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. And I think that like that entrepreneurial journey, especially with real estate, because they give you the rah,
Yeah.
which I don't think any other industry necessarily harps on that. Like I've never heard that there's a plumber summit where they're like, the income is limitless.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, technically in business, your income can be
Yeah,
can be
anything you do can
limitless.
be limited. You could cut hair and make $1 million a year if you
Yeah.
really want to. So, yeah,
But with 4 million transactions that happened last year, down from 5, down from 6, it's what I have been told is, I don't feel it,
Yeah.
honestly, is that we are working like 5 times as hard as the people who were pre-COVID.
yeah,
Like getting a buyer in this day and age right now, if I get a new buyer and we have that consultation, there are ones that I feel will have a stronger ability to win offers. And then there are some where, very honestly, it's almost like I love the people. Of course, I'm going to help them.
yeah,
And I go back to my business manager. He's like, you're going to lose money when this is all done because of your gas.
yeah,
Like, you didn't make enough money to justify all of this. And this early in my business, and because I do like genuinely care about people,
yeah,
it's hard for me to just, the old industry would say like no quote,
yeah,
which means like I'm just not going to work with you.
yeah,
And it's because they don't fit my buyer profile. And a lot of these people, especially in, how about this, the NAR lawsuits.
Yeah.
They brought up all of these lawsuits to talk about commission structure and being more transparent.
yeah,
And then there is the conversation that it might go to, and none of this is settled,
yeah,
but it might go to where buyers are paying their own buyer's agents.
yep,
The first conversation I had with somebody about that, I just didn't even think about this, and it's the first thing he brought up. And he goes, oh my God, that's going to hurt the people who need us the most.
Yeah.
The people who are putting every single one of their overtime checks,
Yeah.
like they're saving for 5 years. They're just trying to get out of the rental trap because rent is going up
yeah,
day over day like crazy. They're just trying to escape that, and they're bringing every dime they have for their closing costs and their down payment.
yeah,
And now we're in an environment where they have to pay their own buyer's agent.
yeah, and much
Who
like
do you
everyone,
know? Well, the
much
other
like
half of that
everyone,
is,
we don't work for free. So
yes, who do you know who would work for free? I mean, you'd already have to be independently wealthy and
Yeah.
and just really enjoy it.
yeah, you'd have to be in a position where you could work for free, or you have someone who needs the experience and is willing to work for free. But then you get stuck with someone who doesn't have the knowledge to represent you in the best way possible.
Yeah, it's without putting any sugar on it. Who would be willing to help you buy a home for $500?
Yeah, I'm not.
not someone who does this 9 times a day.
Yeah, there's
And
no
they're
way.
like, hey man, just so you know,
No way.
it's not like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, and it's
And
not. Yeah, it's not like us being.
Like, I'd rather be that guy who rents out kites at Bradford Beach than to
Dude.
show homes for $500.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you said. It's not gonna cover my gas, dude. You
No.
know, like I mean, yeah.
No. And I feel awful because when we're doing first time home buyers like seminars and stuff, and I'm looking out at the crowd, we're watching just the joy leave their eyes as we talk about what the supply and demand of housing inventory is and how it affects their ability to purchase homes.
Yeah.
It's how many people right now are in like the 200 to 330 range, and like I show up to homes early, like 10 minutes early, and I typically do my run around the outside, and then I like to do a run around the inside.
Do you actively run?
No, I would look different. No, it's a very heel to toe.
Might look strange if there was just a big dude running around the outside of this house for sale.
That might be intimidating enough for my clients to like, no.
Yeah.
No.
You meet a realtor.com lead, you're just
I'd be so fit,
pacing around the outside of the house.
Because when they get there, I want to focus on them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be distracted and missing things that are really, really obvious when they're there.
Yeah.
So by the time they get there, they have like a mini inspection.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed in the past 2 months is I'll get there 10 minutes early and I will watch 15 plus different realtors and clients go in there. And then my clients show up and they're like, what do you think? Do you think if I come in at this, I'm like, now we're talking about our competition and the most popular price point in one of the most popular areas is 10 offers.
Yeah, at least.
Normally, and this
there's
is
always
fat,
one that's cash too.
the people who win are reaching down.
Yeah.
Nobody is putting everything on the line and winning the offer typically. It's the people who are like shopping at 400 who went, ooh, actually, let's just go look at this one.
Yeah, they're good then.
And now they're the winning offer because they came from the financial situation of a higher and came down. Or we are seeing cash offers.
Yeah. Yeah, you're up to 550. You're up to 350, but let's look at like 320, 300.
Yes.
Let's start with that. Let's not go to 350 because I've had actually a decent amount of scenarios now where we go look at something and it's like top end of budget. And I'll call the listing agent before I even show it and just be like, how many offers do you have? And they're like, oh, 3. I'm like, okay. Could you guys write at like 10,000 over at least? Well, no. Okay, then we have to keep moving.
Yeah, and honest to God, I do think there's a benefit in doing that because if you go through the whole system of showing the home, breaking down the offer, like writing their highest and best with the entire time, the knowledge base of like, if we can't come to a certain, like we're pretty familiar with the markets that we work in, and if we're not, we do due diligence.
Yeah, actually.
Like if I'm up in Port Washington, I will do insane amount of due diligence before I go show that home.
Yeah.
And it's because I want to know, like, it's far enough up there where maybe they're not getting 3, 5, 7 offers per house because they're not necessarily as close to job centers.
Yeah.
So I'll call the other listing agents and be like, of ones that sold. Yeah. Be like, hey, how many offers did you get? You can't talk terms or anything like that, obviously, but how many offers did you get? Just to help me get an idea of like, only one person won that home.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the other 7 that he said that he got, they went to the next home, which is the one we're going to.
Yep.
And when I'm in an environment where I need to do that research beforehand, it's important because I never want to go show a home that's listed at 310 knowing my client's upper limit is like 315 without having that conversation.
They're going to love it. They're going to have their heart set on it. And then you're going to go show them 12 other homes and they're going to be like, well, it's not quite like the one over there. And they're just going to relate it back to that one. And then you're screwed because they love that one so much.
Have you ever set up, like if you have one client in a day, have you ever set up your showings, the worst house to the best home they're going to see that afternoon? Or will you show them the best one first and show them the worst homes after that? Or is it just strictly geography?
Honestly, strictly geography.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I just pull up a bunch of dots on a map and I'm like, all right. So it's my least favorite thing about being a realtor on the buy side.
Yeah.
Scheduling like 12 showings in one day. And I'm just like, I don't know how this is gonna work. And then now, because apparently they decided to use two different showing platforms,
Yep.
so then you have to switch back to this one to that one to this one to that one, and then this one, this isn't on your calendar, so then you forget about it and you didn't show up and you're 10 minutes late. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. That was a wonderful sneak thing that they pulled. I think like our industry, especially Wisconsin realtors, we're constantly getting thrown new stuff all the time.
They just need
We're
to show
constantly
back
adapting. We're like I feels like once a month we go into our brokerage meeting and they're like, so more new information, guys, and it's how we adapt to the business. And I do love that it is like, I don't know, twice a year somebody says something that's going to completely disrupt the real estate industry.
Yeah.
It's going to be completely different. And most of the time, whenever I hear that and I'm having conversations with clients, it's like, it was always like that.
Yeah.
Like, Max, iBuyer program is coming out and there's like several different companies that do it. I'm like, there's always, but they're called investors.
Yeah.
They're, and I don't mean to make light of that, but they're like,
Yeah.
I can go right now with any home that somebody brings me and bring you 3 cash buyers.
Yeah.
They are not going to be fair market offers because they're investors.
So no,
that's what the iBuyer
expireds,
program
dude.
is to a degree.
Yeah, I love when expireds are like, "Well, I just want a buyer." I'm like, "All right, great. You want 500, right?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, I can have a buyer at 425 tomorrow, cash." They're like, "Well, am I gonna take that?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, go figure." Like,
Yes.
you want is a buyer, but that's not all you want. It's about price too. So then,
have you noticed that there is almost I find it fascinating there's like a disconnect between that it costs money to sell a product, to get it in front of people, to market it, to represent it when you're selling it.
Yeah.
And then what I have found is people buy homes and they don't do very much to it, if anything at all, and then want the most money and don't want to do any repairs.
Yeah.
And it's like, everything in your home, just like your car, has a lifespan. Everything. Yeah. Your furnace, your roof, your windows, they all have a lifespan.
Yeah.
If you pulled up to buy it like a Toyota Camry, and the pictures were professionally taken by real estate photographers and they looked amazing, and you came and all 4 tires were flat, and as soon as you started it up, the engine started smoking, wouldn't you want to be like, maybe we should renegotiate?
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a different conversation.
Probably double check on this one,
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I think there's just a wild misconception of when you partner up with a realtor, I don't know anybody's fear because you can always get out of a relationship contract. Like, I think people think that if you're unhappy, if you're my client in my transaction, that I want you to still be there.
Yeah.
Like, one, I don't want anyone to have a negative experience in real estate. 2, if you're having a negative experience with me, I want you to go have a good experience, and we will absolutely dissolve that relationship.
Yeah, it's exactly.
And 3, why would I kill our relationship and then prevent any referrals from coming through you in the future?
Exactly.
I genuinely want what's best for my clients, and because of that, it benefits me in the long run.
Of course. Yeah, and for the people who it doesn't, those aren't the people you want to be working with anyways.
Yeah,
that's the way that I look at it.
That's
because
fair.
It sucks too, and like you lose the deal, right? And you're like, oh, I wanted that one, or you've been working with them for a while, and for whatever reason they decide to go somewhere else, or whatever the reason is. I'm like, well, I didn't want to work with them anyways, so.
I think that's another thing that most people won't consider, is that when you're interviewing your agent, he is interviewing you back.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people who I just decide not to work with.
I have had a few over the years where I could tell during like the first initial conversation, which was our honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you see everybody's best side. I could already tell that it was like not going to be a good partnership.
Yeah, and you just know that. And as a good agent, you're able to just be like, hey, it's not going to work. Like, I'm not the person for you, right?
Yeah.
And as a good agent, you can do that. And I think that's something that makes a good agent too, is just realizing, like, because all personalities don't mix, right? I'm not going to be able to work with everyone underneath the sun and provide exceptional value, right? The people that you work with might not work with me just as well as they work with you. So, like,
yeah,
I think understanding and obviously we want to help as many people as we can. So we obviously work with a lot of different people, but ultimately they're the people who hey, whether it's even, I think sellers it's more prevalent with, where like a seller wants a certain amount and I can't be that person to do it for him.
Yeah, I get that.
Even in buyers too.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like the whole conversation, I hope is super enlightening for anyone who watches this, because I think when you see realtors talk behind closed doors, it brings a lot more gravity to what's going on.
Yeah.
It's when you have these conversations in your offices with other people who are not in this industry, I bet you guys hype each other up in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard a lot of people say, like, I would never pay over asking. And I'm like, well, asking is just like a relative number that we agreed as a community is the value of that home. It's only worth what people are willing to pay for. And we're reflecting that on the other homes sold around you.
Yeah.
So we have sobering conversations with our clients because we want to make sure that we're setting expectations and not breaking people's hearts.
Yeah, no kidding.
And at the same time, making sure that they are getting a little bit of an education as to what the market is. And I have not been the first realtor for people. And I have seen, they tell me the difference. Like, it is so different.
Yeah.
Having a conversation with you versus my last realtor. We wouldn't talk about any of this stuff. Like, any of this stuff. Yeah. And the amount of times that I'm like, hey guys, I normally only do this when you love the home. But let's talk about some of the things I saw that might be problematic going forward. Yeah. If they don't love the home, we don't have that conversation. There's no need to talk about the negatives of a home where they already said no.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
But having
made that easy on you.
Standing out by the cars and going like, these are the couple things that we brought up. I just want you to be aware of them and kind of have a relative timeline of when that might cost you money. And then you guys make an appropriate decision based on like how much you love the home. Because I've definitely stood in front of a home that checked every single box with someone, and I could tell that there were 3 layers on the roof. Like, just looking at the side, I'm like, that's going to be expensive to pull off, put in a dumpster, and put a fresh layer on. And it greatly reduces the lifespan of that shingle when there's 3 layers on. And your homeowner's insurance is going to want to know that you have 3 layers.
They could just throw a 4th on.
Or put a metal roof right over the top of those. Yeah. There's plenty of options. But I think having this conversation and just watching like other realtors interact with their clients is really enlightening. And knowing that we're all kind of having those proficient realtors are all having those conversations with their clients about like what it actually is going to be tremendously valuable for all of our clients. And I'm just excited that we got to sit down and have this like sobering conversation. So thank you very much, bud.
Yeah, appreciate
it, man.
Yeah.